Just click on the weather section.
Former Vice President Al Gore was at Duke University tonight to give a lecture on the environment, but not everyone agrees with his message. WREO's Adam Owens was there. He joins the Smart Newsroom with more. Adam?
Former Vice President Gore was invited by the Nicholas School of the Environment. It brought out a lot of interest, those who agree with Gore's message and a few who do not.
People felt lucky to be waiting in this line.
To hear what he says would be extremely interesting.
This was a tough ticket to get. 1,200 seats in Page Auditorium went fast. Others had to watch nearby over closed-circuit television. Former Vice President Al Gore visited Duke University, sharing his concerns on what he calls the climate crisis. The warming of the Earth, Gore says, will drastically change life on our planet.
There's all signs pointing to that we only have, a very finite amount of time to continue along the direction that we're going.
Gore says solar, wind, and geothermal energy are the answers to fix the problem.
It could be a booming industry in the next 10 to 15 years.
Others were upset the former Vice President was speaking at all.
You're giving Al Gore a venue to promote his film and his notoriety without any chance of debate.
A handful of protesters were not far from the auditorium. They say data Gore uses to make his points has been disproven, and protesters say the proposed fixes will be costly.
I despise what Al Gore is doing. He's enriching himself at the expense of poor people.
We interviewed people on both sides of the debate. What you will not hear is Mr. Gore talk about his thoughts on climate change in his own words. Media cameras were only allowed to record the first 5 minutes of the speech, time spent on thanks to friends and supporters, and humorous anecdotes.
I don't think that's very funny.
Reporters were allowed to stay for the whole event, but cameras of any kind were not allowed in after those first 5 minutes. Organizers at the university say it's the policy of Mr. Gore's team. Jerry.
Thank you, Adam.
25 years after a triple murder, a military jury found a soldier guilty. Master Sergeant Timothy Hennis was led away from a courthouse on Fort Bragg in handcuffs today. He's guilty of stabbing to death Catherine Eastward and her 2 young daughters in Fayetteville. This is the 3rd time he has stood trial for the murders. He was acquitted in state court in 1989, but DNA evidence reopened the case and he was brought back to Fort Bragg to face a court-martial. Tomorrow, prosecutors will make their case to give Hennis the death penalty. Another Fort Bragg soldier was in court today charged with sexually assaulting a woman on post. The military is trying to figure out if there's enough evidence to take the case to a court-martial. The hearing does not involve several other rape charges Aaron Purnell faces in Cumberland and Hope counties. An investigator for the Army said today Purnell claimed a voice inside his head made him do bad things. The hearing continues tomorrow.
Tomorrow, Raleigh police will release search warrants and a 911 call in the murder of a state school board member. Kathy Taft was beaten at a Raleigh home more than a month ago. She died 3 days later. So far, no arrests have been made. A judge had sealed the warrants and the 911 call at the request of the district attorney. So far, police have said very little about this case. A Durham man shot during the carjacking is recovering from surgery. 83-year-old George Pratt was shot twice in the legs while he stood by his car on Franklin Street yesterday. Police found the 1994 Plymouth Acclaim this morning, less than a mile away, but they're still looking for 2 suspects. Pratt needed a rod inserted into his leg, and he'll have to have physical therapy.
23 ConAgra employees filed a new lawsuit. They were seriously injured in a deadly explosion last June. The workers are suing multiple suppliers, contractors, and the town of Garner. Federal investigators said contractors were installing a water heater, venting natural gas inside the building, causing the blast. The suit alleges Garner inspectors were inside the day of the explosion and that they knew gas was being improperly vented into the building.
No word yet on what caused a fire that killed 13 horses in Orange County. A barn caught fire around 3:30 this morning at Foxwood Farm in Chapel Hill. Authorities say help arrived in 10 minutes, but by that time, the horses were gone. Most of them were being boarded at the farm. 3 belonged to a trainer at the facility. Firefighters say they kept an adjacent barn from catching fire, and that saved another 9 horses. Wayne County Animal Control says this is the worst they've ever seen. More than 100 dogs and cats at a Zebulon home in conditions so bad most of them did not survive. 20 dogs and 3 cats did survive. Johnny and Mary Morton are charged with misdemeanor animal cruelty. Wayne County officials say several of the animals that were rescued are still up for adoption at the Wayne County Animal Shelter.
Searchers are waiting until it's safe to go back into a West Virginia mine where high gas levels forced them to retreat earlier today. 4 miners are still missing, in addition to the 25 who were killed in Monday's explosion. Meanwhile, the chief executive of Marti Energy, which owns the mine, says the company will pay for the funerals of the victims. We also learned of a local connection to the miners found dead. 52-year-old Carl Eichord has a sister who lives in Vance County. Eichord worked in the mines for 34 years. A family member says Eichord told them on Sunday he was concerned about the mine's roof and worried about going to work on Monday. He leaves behind 2 children and 2 grandchildren.
New information about a Qatari diplomat who caused a bomb scare on a plane last night. It turns out Mohammed al-Madadi was smoking in a bathroom, but made a wisecrack, saying he tried to light his shoes on fire. He was traveling on business. Sources say he was headed to Denver to meet with an imprisoned al-Qaeda agent to make sure he's being treated well. Officials say al-Madadi will be sent home or transferred to another country.
Today, the head of North Carolina's Republican Party called on the chairman of the Republican National Committee to resign. Michael Steele has taken a lot of heat in recent weeks over questions of fiscal mismanagement and leadership within the RNC. The RNC is a primary fundraising arm for the GOP, yet some members were recently criticized for lavish spending at a sex-themed nightclub. So far, Steele has given no sign that he plans to step down. A huge announcement by the NHL today is a big deal for the Triangle, even if you're not a hockey fan.
The Carolina Hurricanes will host next year's All-Star Game, bringing fans, great hockey, and money to the area. Tonight, the Canes wrapped up their final home game of the season as they look ahead to next year. Ken Smith joins us live from the RBC Center. Ken?
Yeah, Joe and Deborah, it's a good thing tonight was hat night here at the Canes game because the Hurricanes pulled off quite a hat trick today, having successfully hosted a Stanley Cup Finals, the NHL Draft, now the NHL All-Star Game. So with tonight's win, these fans had a lot to cheer about today. For Hurricanes fans, there will be no playoff run this season, but many of them still have high hopes for the future of this team.
I love Cam Ward. I'm glad to hear that he's, on the mend. And I look for another Stanley Cup.
A worthy goal, but for now, fans will have to settle for the